The populists were an important political group that came out of actions from the early and into the mid-19th century. Created in the early 1890s, they had several groups which preceded them, including the Grange and various farmer alliances. However, by 1892, farmers had become so radicalized by ongoing economic difficulties that they founded their own political party in Omaha, Nebraska, with the Ocala platform, and the party was called the Populists. We'll start today with just looking at the origin, that is, where did the Populists come from? One of the problems that farmers had great difficulties with was banks' continuing insistence on tight credit or sound money. This served to decrease the amount of money in circulation, which increased interest rates. Generally, a smaller amount of money in circulation increases interest rates. This hurts people who tend to be in long-term debt. Farmers buying additional land were in long-term debt. Farmers buying new technology were in long-term debt. So as interest rates go up and farmers' commodity prices go down, then they have significant economic problems, much of which they blame, or to some extent they blame, on bankers. Again, fiscally conservative bankers, financiers like sound money, but sound money is the enemy of anyone who is in long-term debt or continuing debt. Continuing debt could be characterized by people who have to take out an operating loan each year to do business, as farmers would need to. Additionally, tight credit slows down the economy, fewer jobs are created, and people have a greater difficulty getting loans. Again, people have a greater difficulty getting loans. That would include farmers. At the heart of some of these problems was the amount of money in circulation. In the 19th century, money was backed by gold. That is, you could look at the bottom of a piece of currency and it said, "In gold coin, payable upon demand to the bearer." That is, people knew that money had value because it was backed by gold, and everyone knew gold had value. Additionally, even coins, gold and silver coins, had a $20 gold coin had $20 worth of gold in it. A $1 silver coin had $1 worth of silver in it. Money was backed by gold. That limited the increase in the amount of money in circulation according to how much specie, how much gold and silver the government possessed. That would, by the late 19th century, severely limit the expansion and growth of the economy. However, it was quite common in the 19th century for countries' currencies to be backed by gold. Indeed, the United States does not leave the gold standard forever until the 1930s under the presidency of Franklin Roosevelt. Do remember that will be a phrase that we will continue to hear more and more, under the presidency of Franklin Roosevelt. By 1873, there was more silver in some coins than the face value. That is, a $1 silver coin might have $1.25 worth of silver. Well, that would cause people to sell them off in bulk. For that and other reasons, silver was demonetized in the Demonetization Act of 1873, thus causing a smaller amount of money in circulation, thus causing loans to be even harder to get. Thus, farmers called this Demonetization Act of 1873 the crime of 73. So by the 1870s, farmers were hurt with increased costs for buying new technology, costs for farming more land, and as productivity increased, their commodity prices, the prices for wheat and corn and beans, went down, and they really felt helpless. So they began to create new organizations to try to help their plight. The first of these organizations were called the Grange or Grangers, Granger being an archaic word for granary. They were also to help, besides helping the economic plight of the farmers, to kind of connect them to society, a place for social meetings, a place for farmers to get educated. Remember that unlike today, in the 19th century, people living on farms lived an entirely different standard of living, almost a different culture from people living 20 miles away inside a town or a city. Indeed, well up into the 1930s, a trip into town might be a weekly experience for the family, and perhaps not even all of the family would get to go. The Grange, also known as the Patrons of Husbandry, was then founded to help farmers out in many different areas. Here you can see by this picture and the sub-pictures on sides, they venerate the plow, as Jefferson would have done, believing agricultural living was the top kind. There is sheep herding, there is producing, and that the patrons of husbandry sit in front of herders and farmers like a queen or king over the chosen people of the country. The Grange does have some success. The Grange is successful to some extent at the state level, getting state legislatures to pass more favorable railroad rates, and in some ways to regulate them, but that success is very short-lived. Again, the Grange seeks to take what is a very monotonous and very physically difficult life and to make a fairer economic balance, helping farmers to have some power against the very powerful railroads, and to take them away from the newfound pressures of the marketplace from after the market revolution. The mini-state movements turn into the national Grange. They have some successes. In Munn versus Illinois, a state court decision said that states could regulate grain storage rates. However, in Wabash, Illinois, it's ordered that states cannot regulate interstate railroad rates. That is, only the federal government can. That eventually will lead to the passage of the Interstate Commerce Act in 1887, giving the Interstate Commerce Commission the power to regulate rates. Then the farmers' alliances eventually replace the Grange. They have various names, but they are all some form of alliances. The Agricultural Wheel in Arkansas, the Farmers Union in other southern states. And important to remember, it is still entirely segregated. The white farmers' alliances have about 1.5 million members. The colored farmers' alliances have about 1 million members. Even cotton farmers that live next door to each other in the South cannot join the same group, cannot go to the same meetings, even though they are fighting for the same things. Segregation is all pervasive. It is pervasive in every aspect of life. The alliances and eventually the Populist Party also try to address what farmers contend to be long-standing problems of tariffs. That is, there had been tariff protection of northern manufactured goods, thus making manufactured goods more expensive. However, agricultural goods from the South were not tariff protected, so their prices did not go up. And then lastly, if European countries are not able to sell manufactured goods in the United States, or only a lessened amount, then they have fewer hard dollars, fewer US dollars with which to purchase United States agricultural goods. As you can see from this 1888 presidential poster, Democrats Cleveland Thurman, still 4 years before the populists have their first platform, tariff reform is a issue that is beginning to be addressed, or at least say that they're going to address it by the Democratic Party. As we move into the late 1880s and early 1890s, farmers' problems are exacerbated. Having to purchase new machinery is a heavy debt problem with high interest rates. It also makes farmers more productive. With demand being equal, a greater supply then drives prices down further. The answer to this, of course, for farmers will be the Populist Party, founded in 1892. They will have their own candidate for president in 1892, James B. Weaver.